potatoes. You know, Justin Trudeau's so-called
Jeez.
resignation, it really is the long goodbye. And don't think blackface is not going to miss an opportunity, whether it's domestic or international media, to make a jackass out of himself. Case in point, Justin Trudeau has a new whiz-bang definition for what a Canadian is. Take it away, Justin.
That's not going to happen. Canadians are incredibly proud of being Canadian. One of the ways we define ourselves most easily is, well, we're not American. There is such a depth of pride that that's not actually an issue. What I think is happening in this is President Trump, who's a very skillful negotiator, is getting people to be somewhat distracted by that conversation, to take away from the conversation around 25% tariffs on oil and gas and electricity and steel and aluminum and lumber and concrete, and everything the American consumers buy from Canada is suddenly going to get a lot more expensive if he moves forward on these tariffs. And that's something that I think we need to be focusing on a little bit more.
Yeah, so Sheila, I want to hear your take, but let me give you my take. When you define yourself or your product or your service as something it's not, then it's not really much of an identity, a product or service. For case in point, if you ask the Toronto Maple Leafs, what are you? Well, we're a hockey team that hasn't won the Stanley Cup in over half a century. Well, that's accurate. But
Right.
what are you? You know,
Right.
if
Well,
you
at least they're saying, but we're not the Habs.
you know, if you say, what's a cantaloupe? And the answer is, it's not a banana. That's accurate. But what's a cantaloupe? You know what I'm saying, Sheila? And by the way, one last point I want to make. When you say this, well, we're not Americans, the absolute chutzpah of this prime minister, that's a slur. That's saying to
Right,
Americans, we
we're
aren't
better than
you.
them.
We are better. We're judged by a higher standard. I don't know about you, Sheila. I love the United States of America. I love Americans. And for blackface to slur our biggest allies that way is absolutely egregious and outrageous.
I've got a couple of points to make, actually, probably three. Remember when Justin Trudeau said a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian? And that was when we were talking about taking away the citizenship of foreign-born citizens who were guilty of terrorism offenses. He said a Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian, and yet he still remains unable to define what a Canadian is. But you know who could define what a Canadian is? John Diefenbaker, Conservative Prime Minister, was certainly able to do that. When he was asked what a Canadian was, he said, I'm a Canadian, free to speak without fear, free to worship in my own way, free to stand for what I think is right, free to oppose what I believe is wrong, or free to choose those who shall govern my country. This heritage of freedom I pledge to uphold for myself and for all mankind. That's a man who understood what it meant to be Canadian. And interestingly enough, many of the things he listed, Justin Trudeau has made illegal under the modern version of Canadians, that you're not free to stand for what you are right. Ask the Freedom Convoy to oppose what you believe is wrong, or free to choose those who will govern my country. We are currently not free to do that because Justin Trudeau has subverted that process and handed it back to the Liberal Party.
They have a very small military. They pay less than 1%. They're about the lowest payer in NATO. They're supposed to pay much more. They haven't been paying. They have a lot of problems, and I was with Wayne Gretzky. I said, Wayne, would you like to be the governor of Canada? I can't imagine anybody doing any better than Wayne. Wayne was not too interested, but I think he probably would have liked statehood. He's a friend of mine. He's a great guy. He's the great one. We call him the great one, right? He's a great hockey player. But I will say this. I think that there's, it was stated pretty strongly a couple of weeks ago about Canada, and people laughed, and now they're all saying, well, it's very interesting. And I say, from the standpoint of the United States, we're subsidizing Canada $200 and $250 billion a year. We have massive deficits. They've taken about 20% of our car business. I'd rather do it here. We could put tariffs on. We don't have tariffs on them yet, but they will. That will happen. but they've taken about 20% of our car business. I'd rather have it done in Detroit or have it done in South Carolina or any other state that does cars, and we have a lot of them. We don't need Canada for that. We don't need Canada for lumber because we have big forests that we have, not utilized. In some cases, they're protected, which I can take that protection off. And you take down a tree and you grow a better tree. That's, pretty common. But we don't need anything. We don't need their fuel. We don't need their energy. We don't need their oil and gas. We don't need anything that they have. And I said to Trudeau, I said, why are we subsidizing you $200 and $250 billion a year? He said, I really don't know. And I said, well, I don't know either. I said, what would happen to Canada if we didn't? He said, Canada would be obliterated if that happened. I said, then Canada should be a 51st state. And that's where we are now.
Well,
all right.
Sheila, here's my take. I think what began truly as an off-the-cuff remark has now become a running joke.
Exactly.
And that, begs the question, is it a joke? Maybe not a joke, but I would say if you read Donald Trump's superb book, The Art of the Deal, I truly believe this is a negotiation tactic. And Trump isn't even residing in the White House. And what do we see? We see certain Canadian provinces already beefing up border security, just like that. And, but I would say too, and this is why I think Donald Trump is being disingenuous. Contrary to what he said, everybody is on side with becoming a state. Well, not everybody. There is a big liberal base here in Canada. And Sheila, let's hypothesize that Canada becomes the 51st state, which is kind of preposterous because how can you have one new state bigger than all 50 combined? But that's what would happen. Here's the deal.
It doesn't fix my problems of being culturally incompatible with the rest of the country. Carve us up 3-4 times if you're going to do it.
True enough. But as much as we're likely going to have a conservative majority government this year come into office, that might not be forever and ever. The Liberals consider themselves the natural ruling governing party of Canada. What I'm getting at, if the state of Canada has 2 Senate seats and those are Democratic, in a razor-thin Senate margin that we see in recent years, does Donald Trump want that? Does he want a democratically controlled Senate? I mean, this is why the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico are not full-fledged states as much as the left wants them to be, because those would be left-leaning, and there, bingo, overnight you have 4 more Democratic senators. So that's why I don't think for Trump's own self-interest, he wants us as a bona fide 51st state.
Well, and it's, when people say that Trump is being absolutely dead serious here, I worry that they've never bought something on Facebook Marketplace before or gone to a garage sale. This is a negotiating tactic to get us to do the things that Trudeau should be doing anyway, securing the border and cooperating a little bit more on economic issues. And, who, as I said the other day in the staff meeting, who would buy a crack house? would Trump? I mean, because that's sort of the analogy here. But I wanted to just share some thoughts that I put in our company Slack channel the other day as people were like, oh my God, are we going to be crushed by tariffs? Well, maybe. But that's up to Justin Trudeau now, isn't it? Do I think Trump is being completely serious? No. Do I wish he would stop threatening me with a good time? Slightly. As Premier Danielle Smith points out, Trump has a great sense of humor. And in all of this, here's the truth in all of this. He's making fun of Trudeau. Yep. He's teasing him. But in the teasing and the mockery is a really harsh truth. And any good comedian jams the truth into the comedy. Canada is a shell of what it used to be. And the decay of Canadian society happened in the 9 years that Trudeau was in power. Nobody is better off today than they were 9 years ago. Trudeau has destroyed our immigration system. And as a result, housing prices are up, wages are down. He carbon taxed everything we do, making life and work unaffordable. Crime has spiked. And Trudeau has censored, arrested, and frozen the bank accounts of dissidents and critics. Our healthcare system would sooner euthanize you than treat you. Our economy is in free fall. The Canadian people are demoralized. Even worse, so is our military. It's gone completely woke. And the sad reality is that if not for the benevolence of our neighbors to the south, tariffs could crush us and we could be taken over by force, and not just by the Americans, by literally anybody. So Trump is joking, but Trudeau doesn't even realize that he's the joke in all of it.
You know, you're so right. Donald Trump is the man of tomorrow, and that kicks in precisely on Monday, January the 20th. And Trudeau is yesterday's man, taking this long, prolonged walk in the snow to oblivion, still capable of doing some damage on the way out, I would argue, Sheila, much like Joe Biden is doing a lot of damage on his remaining days. Yeah. And like I said, this is A, negotiating tactic that's already paying dividends, and B, a mocking of a leader that he does not like. We know that from Donald
No respect
Trump's
for him
first
whatsoever.
term.
Yeah, he has no respect for Trudeau, and that's what really this is all about. This isn't really about the Canadian people. I don't think Americans have a problem with us, by and large, except for the fact that some of us keep electing Justin Trudeau. This is a mockery in which is a very difficult truth, and that is that our country is all but destroyed by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Oh, hi, it's Ezra Levant here in Toronto with an important message because we need your help. Independent journalism in Canada is under attack. Government censors, big tech deplatformers, and the dying legacy media are all working together to maintain exclusive control on the information you receive. They don't want you to hear other voices like ours, and they really don't want you to be informed and to think for yourself. That's why the work we do here at Rebel News is so important. Our on-the-ground reporting, independent news shows, and special content you won't find anywhere else. It's all designed to give you trustworthy information and alternative viewpoints so you can decide for yourself. We don't get government money, and we are not owned by some big global conglomerate. We're funded by people just like you, so please support independent journalism and help us continue our work by subscribing and becoming a Rebel News Plus member today, right here on the page. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. Members get instant access to all of our shows, invitations to exclusive events, and access to our premium content like live event footage and documentaries you won't see anywhere else. Only Rebel News Plus members can join the conversation by participating in the comments section of our new website. That way you can have your say too. More than anything, though, you'll be able to take pride in supporting real, honest journalism, and you'll help our talented team continue to do the work to push back on the establishment. We really can use your help. We need it, in fact. So thank you, and enjoy Rebel News Plus.